Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another episode. The first thing is always, I hope everyone's well. And if you haven't noticed, the walls are different. I spent all day yesterday doing some DIY. Can't lie, I actually really enjoyed it. But yes, this is the outcome, and I want you to be honest. Do you like it? Do you not like it? I do have some wall lights coming to go in between the lines, so hopefully it will just give it that little bit of something. I have been looking for some wall art. I want some mango wall art. I'm struggling to find any, but I'm sure I will come across some eventually. So there will be some wall art up there as well. But I want to know your thoughts. Let me know. You won't hurt me feelings, honestly. If you think I've done a bad job, let us know in the comments. But there has been a lot of news around Newcastle United today because I'm going to be honest, guys. This news hurt us a little bit. Ross Wilson has been announced the sporting director of Newcastle United. And the reason why it hurt us a little bit is because that is my dream job. I think Ross Wilson has got the best job, or one of, not the easiest jobs, but the most welcome job in football right now. And I'm going to tell you why, because usually when a sporting director changes, the club's a mess. There's no stability, there's no environment, there's no culture, the team aren't performing on the pitch, but he's walking into a culture, a manager that's already adored by the fans. So he doesn't need to change manager and try and get everybody on his side. It's already in place for him. He doesn't really need to change the squad as such, and they're all thriving in their own individual ways and collectively. So he's walking into an environment that's already stabilized, already a perfect environment for a sporting director to thrive. So if he doesn't realize this and think this is a golden opportunity for me, I'm going to scream, because he needs to walk into this and say, look, everything's already in place. I just need to ride the wave with them, but elevate it a little bit. And we already know as football fans how you can elevate that wave. New contracts to key players, make decisions on contracts that are expiring, and then bring in some sponsorship. He does that and the fans are already like, oh, I love this guy. This guy is a real deal. So just something so simple can make us more effective in the transfer market, but also a little bit of planning to our squad. Remember when I made the video about squad care? This is what I was talking about. And now we've got a director and football in charge. We can have some squad care, a little bit of squad loving. But I'll be serious. Like, I've been screaming for this appointment. I think we desperately need a director of football. And I'm not going to lie, guys. Although I want it to be me, Ross Wilson could be a very smart appointment. Now, one thing I want to throw out there, Ross Wilson, if you're looking for a sidekick, just, you know what? Just give us a bell. Drop us a DM if you want. I'm not fussy. So we are going to be talking about Ross Wilson. Now, I've already done a video on Ross Wilson, looking at his background, what I think of him, what I've heard from him. So if you want to go and check that out, I will link it at the end. It will be on the description, just somewhere about there as well. So I will link it in the description, but also in the end on the cutscenes if you want to have a look at that. But I just want to talk about this appointment, what I expect moving forward, and why we've chosen Ross Wilson. So a statement from Newcastle United reads as follows: "We're delighted to announce the appointment of Ross Wilson as the club's next sporting director." Honestly, it's just a fly. Just a fly, guys. Right, let's get serious. Ross will be responsible for sporting strategy, development, recruitment across men's, women's, and academy teams, working closely with football leadership and executive team. And like I've just said, Newcastle United right now is a perfect environment for a sporting director, because our previous two sporting directors haven't really set the world alight. So if you come in and just do the basic, you will already be seen as better than the other two. So if I'm Ross Wilson here, I'm thinking, right, the culture's there. Eddie Howe's built something successful that's obviously working. There's already a togetherness with the squad. What I need to do is work closely with the CEO and get our house in order off the pitch first. But there is a little bit of squad care to be dealt with, and we're going to touch upon that very shortly. But Ross Wilson has already been speaking about his excitement of joining Newcastle United. So as Craig Howe posted, he said he's been in regular contact with Eddie Howe and David Hopkinson. Given what's gone previously, he feels it's significant when talks about trust. And then Ross Wilson went on to say himself, the trust, cohesion, alignment we're building already feels strong, and we believe that being united as a team will be so important as we continue to move the club forward together. I'm excited to work with everyone across different areas within our football department. This is actually my first time reading this. There's already been excellent work being done here, from the first team to women's team to academy. My aim is to build on that, strengthen our structures over time, and work with our staff to create environments where the staff players can continue to thrive. Thank you so much, because this is everything I've just literally just said. You don't need to change anything because the environment, the culture has already been built. You just need to maximize that environment and culture. Think of it as Eddie Howe's riding a wave right now. Instead of changing direction so you're not riding that wave, Ross Wilson just jumps on his surfboard and rides that wave with him. And could it actually be third time lucky? What I like about this appointment is they've already been in dialogue. Nottingham Forest have obviously given Newcastle United the authority to speak to Ross Wilson, and they've been doing that. So the questions about recruitment, about where the direction the football club is going, has already been asked. And obviously his vision aligns with what Eddie Howe wants. And that is really pleasing to hear, because we do not want another situation like Paul Mitchell. And I honestly believe Eddie Howe would have asked tough questions before this appointment, because we can't afford for this appointment to go south, not for a third time. So let's have a quick look at some of his recent achievements. We all know he went to Rangers and he was sporting director between 2021-23, and he overseen the development of Rangers as training centre, and now it's comparable with Europeans elite. He also remodeled their transfer strategy. It was more about buying young and selling high, selling at peak times to maximize profit. And one of his biggest achievements is Rangers' transfer fee was broken twice with the sales of Nathan Patterson and Calvin Bassey. And then in 2023, obviously up until today, he went to Nottingham Forest, and the key signings he made in Nottingham Forest was obviously Nikola Milenkovic, Murillo, Callum Hudson-Odoi for only $3 million, Anthony Elanga, who they made a big profit on, and our very own Elliot Anderson. He also helped Nottingham Forest from relegation to European football. But I want to start by speaking about his time at Rangers, because he had spells at Falkirk, Watford, Huddersfield and Southampton before becoming Chief Football Officer at Rangers. Now, I've just mentioned he overseen the training development at Rangers, which is positive for Newcastle United, because sometimes you want somebody that's wore the shirt, and he's already seen a redevelopment of a training centre. So hopefully he knows the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts. Sometimes he hopefully made a mistake, so he doesn't make that same mistake with Newcastle United, because we all know we're starting to look at building a new training centre. So to bring in somebody that's already experienced that is only a positive. Since his time at Rangers, Rangers won the league for the first time in 14 years under Steven Gerrard. They also reached the Europa League final. Now, right now, they look miles away from that. Things didn't go smoothly at Rangers. Now, looking back in hindsight, I'm starting to think, was it all his fault? Now, highlighted in the red there, supporters displayed banners with Ross Wilson's face crossed out alongside managing director Stuart Robinson. Fans were frustrated by what they saw as poor squad planning, injury-prone players, and failure to replace aging players. Phrases like good riddance, and fans from Southampton were glad to see the back of him too. Now, actually, I spoke to one of my friends that is involved in Rangers, and he said, to be honest, the recruitment wasn't great. He said sometimes players come in, didn't even kick a football. Average players were coming in for high fees, and that's what got the fans frustrated. Now, looking back in hindsight now, Rangers were on cloud 9 then compared to where they are now. So looking back in hindsight now, was he actually doing a good job with the minimal materials that he'd been given? Because Rangers right now look 10 years away from winning the SPL, and they look a million years away from reaching the European final. So maybe the fans are starting to think the grass isn't always greener. I think the way Rangers have decreased since his departure has made him actually look better. Now, one thing I want to add to that is, I've spoken to people from Nottingham Forest and I've spoken to people from Rangers, and they always say that he's a nice guy. So he passes that dickhead test. I don't think he's egotistical where it's my way or no way. And in jobs like this, when you're working with people with big egos, let's just say Eddie Howe does have a big ego, because you don't get where he is without a big ego. But you can have a big ego without it being arrogant. You've got to have something about you to reach a sporting director at a Premier League club, but also a manager at a Premier League club. But the best sporting directors and the best managers are willing to compromise and listen. Now, one, you've not got to be a dickhead to listen. From the outside looking in, I think that was the situation between Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe. I think just the visions didn't align. Nobody was willing to compromise. There's going to be situations where Ross Wilson has to compromise and listen to Eddie Howe and have a look and think about his way of thinking. But there's also going to be situations where Eddie Howe has to listen to Ross Wilson and say, yeah, actually, that might be a better direction to go in. So everybody in this type of business has to compromise a little bit because football's built on our opinions, and the best sporting directors are willing to listen and be open to other people's opinions. I'm just blabbering on now. So let's carry on with this because I want to give you a little bit more information on Ross Wilson. Now, funny enough, Ross Wilson was born on the 4th of May. That is Star Wars Day. May 4th be with you. But do you know what else day that is? That is actually my birthday. Does that mean I am actually going to be Ross Wilson's little side? So yeah, when you're announcing happy birthday to Ross Wilson, I also want a happy birthday. So there's his history in writing. But also, somebody in the comments once asked me, and I forgot to answer it, so he has a perfect time to answer it. What's the difference between a director of football and the sporting director? And in truth, nothing much. Sporting director is just a modern evolution of director of football. But back in the past, when it was called director of football, their job role was more about boardroom alignment. But now they've been given a broader control, whether that be football identity from youth academy to first team. So they have more say on what goes on in and around the squad. Now, the funny thing is, some clubs actually hire both. Chelsea have got a sporting director and a director of football. Manchester United have got a sporting director and a director of football. RB Leipzig have got a sporting director and a director of football. They've just both been given specific roles. And when I look back and think of it, it's more the clubs that have got a multi-club model. Now let's talk about his time in Nottingham Forest, because he came in 2022-23 season. They finished 16th that season. The season after, they finished 17th. And then last season, obviously, they finished 7th and got European football. Some of the highlight and key transfers: Nikola Milenkovic, Murillo, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Anthony Elanga, Elliot Anderson. You can also add Chris Wood to that as well. Now, if we were to break down some of his biggest achievements at both clubs, if Rangers helped deliver the first title in a decade, a Scottish Cup, a Europa League final. So again, looking back in hindsight now, he did a very good job. In Nottingham Forest, he overseen their rise from relegation threatened to European qualification. Now, the only thing that I had concerns about was a high volume recruitment at Rangers and Nottingham Forest. Because if we just bring up one summer at Nottingham Forest, this is the amount of players that come in. Some of them have been massive hits. Morgan Gibbs-White, for example. Chris Wood, obviously banging in the goals last season. But if I'm being biased and subjective, my only concern is I do not want a big squad overhaul like that. I don't believe in it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right for the culture, the environment. That's just my opinion. Now, what I want to add to that is I don't think he will do that in Newcastle United. I think Eddie Howe will rein in his transfer strategy, but I also think that wasn't all him at Nottingham Forest. Every single summer was like that, I've just showed you, but I don't think that was all him. We all know what Marinakis is like. He is cutthroat. He is ruthless. I think he's probably said to Ross Wilson, get rid of these players and replace them. Ross Wilson's had to do that all in one window. So I believe when there's a culture built already, you'll not see a recruitment like that during a transfer window. But also adding to that, I do believe that we do need a mini overhaul over the next 2 years, because now I'm going to show you the players that are coming out of contract over the next 2 years. Because the one thing I don't want as a football club, you might feel different, you might think this is the way to go, but personally I don't think signing 30 players in one window and selling 30 players in one window is the way to go about things. So I don't actually think that was all him. I think Marinakis had a huge part to deal with that, and I have spoken to some people from Nottingham Forest, and they say that Ross Wilson did an excellent job at Nottingham Forest. Well, they're bound to say that because they got European qualification and he took them from relegation zone to European football. So maybe their squad did need that overhaul and he visioned that. So if he did, all credit to him. And people at Nottingham Forest say that Ross Wilson is a diamond. He likes to get involved in the training. He likes to speak to players. He loves one-on-one situations with players. So I kind of feel like you need that in Newcastle United. Having that environment where you're approachable and players feel comfortable approaching you. And like I said before, he definitely passes the dickhead test. Box number 1 ticked for Eddie Howe. But I just want to finish up on this. And yes, I mean when I say Ross Wilson is walking into gold at Newcastle United. If he realises this can be a huge, huge success for Eddie Howe and Ross Wilson. Usually when director of footballs come in, the squad's a mess. There's no stability. The environment needs changing. But that's all there. He just needs to evolve that and take that to the next level. And that's the beautiful thing, because I look back at our time over Mike Ashley and he's not going into that situation. We only finished 10th or higher once throughout Mike Ashley's reign at Newcastle United. There was 2 relegations in there as well. So it's not like he's going into that environment, is what I'm trying to say. So before I touch upon my next point, I just want to give credit to Eddie Howe, because without a director of football, all the mess behind the scene with the CEO, the director of football, Eddie Howe has managed to stabilize a club. He's managed to keep the culture in check. And that is a massive positive to Eddie Howe. His man management skills are simply phenomenal. But just to break it down, Ross Wilson is one of Eddie Howe's trusted allies, and I think that's the key word in all this: trust. They understand each other. The friendship has already been built, so neither Ross Wilson nor Eddie Howe are walking into the unknown. And if we look at this from a Saudi point of view, I feel like it's a statement signing for a couple of reasons. One, because it shows intent, but two, it backs Eddie Howe's long-term planning. So that tells me that the Saudis are thinking Eddie Howe is going nowhere, and that honestly makes me think they can build something special together. So what's next? This is what I want to see over the next 12 months. Got to get contracts organised, not just for key players. So I want to see contracts for Sandro Tonali, Botman and Tino, but also expiring contracts. We need to make decisions if they need replacing next summer or if they're worth another year's contract. I want to see bigger, better sponsorship. Speaking of sponsorships, as I'm recording this video, we've just signed a sponsorship with Visa, but it's no coincidence. Now that we've got our CEO in, now that we've got our sporting director in, sponsors are starting to think, I want a piece of that. They don't look like a mess. They're not going to make us look bad. That's a club that is moving forward. And I think that, as Newcastle United fans, is all we want to hear. And then from a personal point of view, I want to see unify academy to the first team. We've got some special players in our academy. Let me tell you now, I watch them and I think, yeah, they're not ready just now, but in future, with good development, good coaching, they can be ready for our first team. We all know Sandro Tonali is due a contract. We all know Sven Botman's due a contract. We all know Tino's due a contract. But what I mean about squad care is this is what I was wanting to look at, because Nick Pope, Mark Gillespie, Fabian Shaw, Jamal Lascelles, Kieran Trippier, Emil Kraft, Harrison Ashby, Joe Willock and Jacob Murphy all run out of contract in the next 2 years. 7 of those 9 players run out of contract next year. You can even add Dan Burn to that, because his contract expires in 2027. Now, this right here is a result of having no director of football. One of the director of football's biggest responsibilities is keeping on top of contract. We do not want another Alexander Isak situation, but what I also want to see is selling players at peak times if you don't see them improving your squad. But I'm going to be honest, guys, despite me wanting the role, I think this is a positive and can only be seen as a good appointment. I think Eddie Howe has done his due diligence. And if this is the guy that Eddie Howe wants, who are we to question it? Because since Eddie Howe's come in, I would say 9.9% of the time he's made the right decision. So I think he's deserving to have a say in this appointment. But also, I want to see our transfer planning a lot smarter. In my opinion, we need a ball-playing goalkeeper. We're going to need another centre-back, whether that be this summer or next summer. We're going to need a replacement for Kieran Trippier. We're going to need another midfielder, and then Johan Wissa is literally going to feel like a new signing. But little things like Harvey Barnes' contract's coming out in 2 years' time, if you want to sell him for peak value, you need to make a decision on him come this summer. If you don't see a future with Harvey Barnes, we cannot allow him to run down his contract, because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot when it comes to PSR. But I want to hear your thoughts. You've seen the wall, you've seen the purple. Let me know about your thoughts on this appointment. And as always, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, have a wonderful weekend. Away the lads.